Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the world you're in. Welcome to the Tech Ranch Venture Outfitter. I am Kevin Coyne, and this is Tech Ranch. We're going to be going through a bunch of different things today, but let me go ahead and share my screen as we kick off the country manager's orientation. Now, this program today is a little bit different than some of the other venture outfitter programs, in that part of what we're wanting to signal more formally to the community is this whole idea of what we've already been doing with a number of individuals across the world for exploring community management and how we can actually extend this set of ideas about what's been happening around Tech Ranch and our partner organizations around the world. We'll talk about that. So welcome to the Venture Outfitter. What the Venture Outfitter is here to do is to discover talent, y'all being the talent, develop talent, connect talent to opportunity, and help it scale, and do that across the world. I want to say thank you to DualWorks for being a long-term sponsor. Linda Blackman was involved in Venture Force 17, which was one of the early cohorts in around Tech Ranch. She's gone off to have several significant businesses. One of the things that she's done is she runs the co-working place that we work out of, or that at least the studio is out of. You know that the team, the Tech Ranch team, is all around the world, but partially what we're here to do is to give them good kudos. DualWorks is great because it's right in the center of Austin. And it's a great place. I know a number of our entrepreneurs have their point of presence, even if it's just a mailbox, here at DualWorks. There's all sorts of different activities that are possible. If you're interested, you can check out the URL that's on the website on this slide, or you can reach out to myself or Jello directly, and we'll connect you up. And our Venture Outfitter program continues to expand. We will be talking more about this in the coming weeks. We're launching a different community site to support the community because we've been having some difficulties with the community site. But the main thing on the network level, a number of you have actually especially taken advantage of the weekly live interactions. We do this program, the Venture Outfitter Weekly, but then on Wednesdays, we have a closed door, just people that are in the program type of interactions that's part of the Venture Outfitter network level. If you're interested to ask us more, we'll have a special overview about that coming soon. But today we're here to talk about country managers, and we're going to have a more formal country manager orientation, but I wanted to kind of give you an idea of some of the stuff that's happening. A lot of times, many people have told me, hey, I didn't realize, how is it you're doing stuff in this country and that country and this country and that country? And I thought, well, let's talk about that, because there are a number of prospective country managers that would like to get into our conversation. We'll talk a little bit more about what's been happening and open the kimono just a little bit more to then start setting up some of the relationships that 2 and 3 and 5 years from now are going to actually really start producing results, the type of results that we're seeing in countries like what's been happening with regards to Tech Ranch recently in the Czech Republic, as well as some of the activities that have been happening in our long-term relationships in places like Mexico. So that's what today is all about. But let me first start by reminding you the vision of Tech Ranch, the vision of our community. There's a science fiction writer, William Gibson, that says the future's already here, it's just not widely distributed yet. And the Kevin Coyne corollary on that, my corollary on this whole idea is all the world's problems have already been solved. It's just a matter of connecting the entrepreneur with a solution to the market with a problem. Part of this idea is to continue to work through this concept and expand the impact of it so that we can actually do this type of work. And so some of you have seen this, some of you know, I'm not going to go over a lot of examples today, but we have South Australian technology that is taking on the disease alongside with the World Health Organization Africa, doing some really interesting things. We have one of our Mexican entrepreneurs that came out of our program with the Mexican federal government, who's now preventing heart attacks both in the United States, and his products are now, or his and her, because it's a couple, they're now preventing heart attacks and other activities and are about to be installed in a number of the hospitals across Italy. So lots of stuff that's happening about that. When people say, I don't believe it, I give them about 30 different examples because everyone knows that I can't stop talking about what you guys are up to. It's really exciting to see what's happening. But in order to build on that vision, we've been building venture bridges across the world. Now, we started this way before 2019. For those of you that don't know, Tech Ranch, I was in Austin before this was called Tech Ranch. It wasn't called Tech Ranch until the end of 2008. I was in Austin in 2003 and decided to start an incubator. Took it to Chile, along with a senator who was a presidential hopeful in Chile at the time. So this has been something we've been doing for a very long time. And international is not something that we're bolting on to the Tech Ranch business model. It is the Tech Ranch business model to build these venture bridges. And so what's not listed on this slide is the activities that we've done in South Australia, South Korea, Egypt, some of the other different countries. But we're now to the point that this vision that was somewhat nascent in the early stages, especially with the events of what's happening now, are really starting to take off. I'll give you some examples. The federal government of Mexico in 2018-2019 funded a venture bridge between Mexico, many different cities in Mexico, and Austin, with 200 companies at the first stage, 40 at the second stage, and 10 at the third stage. Now, those 200 still stayed involved with Tech Ranch. In fact, for the largest number of entrepreneurs outside of the U.S., both activities-wise and things like that, has been in Mexico. In fact, I have now spoken in 27 different cities across Mexico, as an example. The national government of Italy funded a program that they called the Global Startup Program. We call the Venture Bridge Italy. And then the Eurasia Foundation funded a bridge with Russia in 2019. That specifically was not with St. Petersburg, not with Moscow, but we were operating in Tumen, Russia. And the idea is, especially with the activities that are happening right now between, the war. I shouldn't say activities. I don't want to say anything less because I don't believe it's just a simple military operation. But the one of the ways that we can really shape world opinion is by being connected with each other. And so even yesterday I hosted another delegation from Russia, and part of my belief is that by working together peer-to-peer around the world, we can actually shape the things that, maybe a decade from now really make impact, because what's happening is not right. But that being said, just keep on going. 2020, obviously, was a really hard year for all of us. Tech Ranch had to lay off a number of different people. We actually had to go virtual with our activities. That's when we launched this series of programs called the Venture Outfitter. And then also we got involved in the Texas Global Health Security Initiative. This is when one of our initiatives with the University of Texas and other organizations like that, Tech Ranch was a peer founding member of the Texas Global Health Security Initiative. What is that? That was, let's organize all these different people about, viral therapeutics and these technologies that can actually save people's lives, as well as Tech Ranch took leadership on organizing a lot of the mental health startups. And we'll be having a subsequent, in the coming weeks, a program specifically about that during this time, we're going to tell you a lot more about the different startups that we got involved with in that. 2021, as things started opening back up, activities in Hungary. We also had activities in the Dominican Republic and El Salvador. But the formal bridge that the Hungarian government funded was, and activities that we did in Budapest happened in 2021. And then in 2022, you see that we're kicking off more at the rate that we had in 2019. Activities with the Czech Republic. The first funds from that were funded by the U.S. Embassy in Prague. Japan, the JETRO organization, which is called the Japan Trade Organization. We now have, as of today, 8 different companies that we've taken into that bridge. And then with NBIA, which is the International Business Incubator Association that I just got back from in the conference over the last few days. Quite literally, I got off the plane at around 4 o'clock yesterday from Atlanta. That organization is not just focused with, we already have a lot of activities in Mexico, but this is with entrepreneurs that are in Costa Rica, Honduras, El Salvador, and in Guatemala. So we can tell you more about that as well. And the idea is that by making all these bridges across the world, we can actually, if you want to solve a really complex problem, you need a really large, heterogeneous solution set. That's the whole idea here. Like more solutions allows you to create solutions for more problems that might be on the other side of the world. The other key characteristic is that most people don't even think about this, that, problems have already been solved in other parts of the world because people look at things differently. And so it's really been powerful to see. And if you ever have a question about what's happening on that, we will start telling more stories about that. So recent activities, recent delegations, and this is all within the last 3 months. We've hosted delegations from all of these different countries that you see on the left side of this, and then the venture bridges that have been recently kicked off that I just talked about on the previous slide. What I'm really wanting to say is I think the world's waking up after coronavirus and is really starting to take activities and move much quicker. And it's interesting to see what's happening. I'm sure I missed a few countries. These are all face-to-face meetings that happened on the left versus there's a much larger list if you include the virtual meetings. And so definitely some activities are happening. And as I mentioned, just got back from the NBIA conference, the International Business Incubation Association. Really great. I met with entrepreneurial ecosystem builders from Ukraine to South Africa to, of course, all the United States. Also, our one of our long-term tech ranchers, a guy by the name of Ruben Cantu, who is a successful entrepreneur, and then left his company to launch in conjunction with the University of Texas. The gentleman in the middle picture there that you see with a group that's smiling in the very front, he is now the University of Texas Director of Inclusion and Innovation, working with minorities to make sure that they have access to entrepreneurial programs at UT. So part of it was great to get to work with him, but also the delegates from around the world. So we'll tell you more about that at some point in the future. The thing that I announced at the conference in front of around 200 people, 2 different initiatives. One of them is the mental health initiatives that entrepreneurship's difficult. Entrepreneurship after coronavirus, very difficult. There's a number of different things that we'll talk about. I'm not going to go into details today. But the mental health initiative that has been happening around the Texas GHS organization now is going to be leveraged across this group. We have a group of people that are forming the committee from NBIA. The second thing was, I said to the chairman of the organization, I said, I think it's time for Tech Ranch's venture bridges to be leveraged because NBIA has what's called a soft landing program that a lot of these co-working places around the world are leveraging the soft landing. Soft landing being someone's coming to your part of the world, your part of the country, your city, and they need a place to land. And part of what we're doing is a lot of these locations don't know how to build bridges. And so Tech Ranch knows how to build bridges. So the impact of what we're about to talk about has much more locations, not just countries that we'll be connecting to, but places that we'll be landing and connecting people into. Pretty exciting stuff. That's why it's important that we started talking about country managers. And the whole idea about this country manager idea is where we're at right now is this is an invitation to start collaborating. This is not some people expect really formalized programs and stuff like that. And at some point, it will be really formalized. But what I want to do is take the alpha kind of activities. If you know about software development, you start with an alpha release, then you go to a beta release. Sometimes you do a delta release, and then you actually, you go do like the formal type of thing. We're at this early stage of this. This is a volunteer position, and it's got benefits, and I'm going to show you some of the benefits from the three examples that I'll give you, so that people can understand. We're not looking to hire people. This is not a job. This is not I'm not looking for contractors or consultants, and there might be at some point in the future positions for people to take employment, but this is not a job, and I want to make sure I say that. The main thing is, like, when you see that there's an organization or organizations or a region of the world that you want to bring some attention to, this is what this is for. And it's all about the heroes of the picture. Who are the heroes? The heroes of our stories are the entrepreneurs. How do we help the entrepreneurs that have the technologies to solve these problems gain access to different markets? That's what it's all about. Like, so if you're looking for what's the success case, is did we move the needle on solving problems together? That's more important than anything else. Now, obviously, if we're moving the needle and we're working with entrepreneurs, that means that business happened, right? Not just moving technology back and forth or having nice conversations, but it should be having nice conversations that are leading to business that have impact. And some of you don't know the background of what TechGrant stands for. Is impact innovation, technology that solves human need. Now, we will have a lot of different kind of companies, and sometimes with some of the locations around the world, creating jobs in that location around the world is big impact, because there might be high unemployment. And anytime you have high unemployment, you have instability in the economy. Anytime you have instability in the economy, you have people that don't have a place to go. You've heard this expression, people without vision perish. Or they get really upset and they fight a whole lot. So how do we actually shift that? So some organizations, like as an example, one of the ones that we've worked with in Guatemala, the person I'm thinking of is a woman by the name of Adriana. She has programs that she's doing as an entrepreneur for other entrepreneurs. And the last time I checked, she had more than 30 women entrepreneurs that were reporting to her, and then programs that she was running for a much larger group of people. But she's the person that we're working with. She's kind of been one of our point of contacts for Guatemala as an example. And it's all about, creating that impact. So I'm going to give you three examples. We have more than this. I just alluded to Adriana, but I thought that I would give you some really specific examples of people that have been more formalized in this process, that in some ways came to me versus the other way around. This is not a heavy recruiting. Today, I'm not signaling heavy recruiting that we're going to go take on 160 countries in the world, but it's now time to actually start scratching the surface and go to the next level down. Let's start with Miran. Country manager Miran, and I always mispronounce your last name, but Miran's with us today, so we're going to actually put him on the spot. He's focused on Armenia. He's an Armenian American. He's based here in Austin. He's a business school professor at UT Austin, University of Texas at Austin. The type of things that he's asked me to do is, he said, hey, will you come talk to our students? He's got a business school that he works with in Armenia, in the capital of Armenia, and that essentially is like talking about, okay, let's create jobs. Let's create, all sorts of different activities there. Since he's with us today on the program, I'm going to put him on the spot in just a second. But we don't have conversations all the time. We've been having conversations back and forth about quarterly, every 3 months or so. And a lot of what he's been doing is assembling stakeholders, to saying, hey, we've got these guys in Austin around Tech Ranch that we can tie things together. He's already doing his own activities in Austin because he's a business school professor here. Then on top of that, we're starting to explore grants to support things back and forth. Murad, why don't I put you on and just have you say a little bit more about the questions we were talking earlier about is what was it like? Why'd you reach out to me the first time? Like, what was your first interaction with Tech Ranch? And then why did you, what was the whole idea about why you even started the conversation? Let's see. I don't know if
I'd
you
be
see. Yeah,
happy
there you
to,
are. Yeah.
Kevin. I turned
Yeah.
on my camera. I may turn it off if it gets a little fuzzy here. But before I do, I think the reason,
Oh, it looks
let me
like,
turn off the camera
yeah,
just so
turn off your
that
camera.
you
Yeah.
hear me okay.
Yeah, and you are in Armenia right now, right? We can hear you okay, but yeah, go ahead and turn off the video just so we can save that
Okay.
bandwidth.
Um, yeah, the well, what I want to say is that I think what attracted me to continue to have conversations and work with Kevin is that the way that I view what he's creating and has created with Tech Ranch is that it, he's really trying to create something that will live much longer than he ever will. And I hope that you live for a long time, Kevin. But I think a lot of us, especially as you get older, you think about, so what can I leave behind that will outlast my very short period of time here on Earth? And
Exactly.
when you look at the when you look at the one thing that can have uh, a huge impact on any sort of developing country. And Armenia is as much of a developing country as anything else on your list. As a small aside, um, uh, the annual budget at the University of Texas at Austin is roughly $4 billion. The gross domestic product of Armenia is about $13 billion. So, take three UT Austins and you have the gross domestic product of Armenia. Small country, the average family income in Armenia equates to $250 a month. Um, there's a fair amount of poverty. Now, what we've been seeing is that there's been a big upsurge in entrepreneurial activities in Armenia, especially within the last few years. And as there are some companies that are, becoming more successful, they're able to start helping sort of the up and coming companies. Now, sort of perfect timing for today. Earlier this evening, I had a visit with the Ministry of Economy here in Armenia, and last year they started a venture capital fund that they are now starting to invest in businesses in Armenia. And one of the parts of the conversation that we had is, so one thing is to be making some smart investments, but also, how we develop the talent here so that, we have investment opportunities to be able to participate in. And the type of things that Kevin, I'll just say preaches, for lack of a better word, uh,
Sometimes I think
is
you're
really
right. It's preaching.
valuable is is valuable here because the the basic fundamentals of entrepreneurship are don't require any specific language. Um, it's 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 religious agnostic. It's race agnostic. The fundamentals I think are applicable everywhere. Um, One of the things that I've been doing while I've been here, my wife has been doing the same thing, is that there's a center called Tumo Center, which was built about 10 years ago that is used for teaching, technology, robotics, programming, digital this, digital that, to students between the ages of 12 and 18 here in Armenia. And I'm there teaching a class on entrepreneurship with my struggling Armenian. And these young people are trying to understand, so what will it take for me to, I have this idea, what will it take for me to be able to actually do something with it? So to be able to provide some programs, now I'm sort of one person. Uh, there's not a whole lot of leverage there, but having a sort of a concrete program that you can take people through, whether it's entrepreneurs that are getting started or existing businesses that are trying to figure out, how do I start moving my stuff outside of Armenia? How do I start moving my stuff outside of the former Soviet Union? Those are the questions that people are trying to answer, and the only way to be able to do that is to be able to have this sort of a network in place where you can reach out to others and say, hey, who can help in this particular regard? So, what you are trying to create and what you have created, I think is something of value worldwide and just as applicable here in Armenia.
Perfect. Well, it's always been my honor to be. We the picture that you see in the lower right of the screen is some of the students or some of the Zoom session where Mehran actually just said, "Hey, will you come speak to their students?" This is from the second session of times that he's asked me to do that. And so part of the thing is we have had some of the Armenians interact in our community, because we have this free community level. Some of them have been a little bit shy at times, and sometimes this time of day is a little awkward for being on this program. But it's really been great because I think, and Imran, I think you're doing this both with your travel back and forth. When you realize that the idea of entrepreneurship, I myself am a product of this. Like I grew up a poor kid by U.S. standards. I didn't know what entrepreneurship was. I certainly didn't have any role models until I accidentally, and I'm telling the truth when I say this, no one ever believes me, but I accidentally stumbled into a job at Next, the Steve Jobs company. It's only because it kind of was forced, like it was, being in an environment that I even learned what entrepreneurship was. Even through engineering school at the University of Texas, I had a scholarship professor that refused. He's like, Kevin, don't take any of those business classes. I don't know why you're taking those business classes. There is such, especially at the time, such a bias against entrepreneurship. Even my own mother, one of the things I like to joke about, but it's very painfully true. My own mother has told me, 10 years to me being an entrepreneur, you know, Kevin, why don't you go get a job? and and so if we want to create these cultures of entrepreneurship, we have to create these conversations. So I see Moran doing that, and I was really moved with his story, as well as the story of Armenia as well. Is another topic that at another time would be interested. And this level of being a country manager is really just conversational. Hey, can we do the following thing? And I think Moran and I, like I said, every 3 months or so, we have a conversation. We've been building towards some activities. We're paying attention to what's happening at the embassy for the grants that might support this type of work. But the conversation has been really conversational. There's not been any compensation that's come back to Tech Ranch or to me for the interactions. But that's okay because long term, there's opportunity in there. It's just a matter of actually putting down the investment of creating some of the interactions back and forth. Moran, was there anything else that you'd like to share about this before we wrap up and I go to the next example of country managers?
Unless you had a specific sort of question, I mean, what I'm trying to do is to get myself embedded more within the Armenian community here in Armenia. Uh, and and the more that I can embed myself and develop even more relationships here, I think the greater the opportunity will be to be able to bring in Tech Ranch to actually run some programs. So, the availability of extra cash in this part of the world is negligible. But at some point, someone is going to say, you know what? Why don't we invest? Pick a number. Why don't we invest $100,000 in trying something, and let's see what that can produce. And I think once you have that opportunity, Kevin, I think you'll really be able to, demonstrate the value that Tech Ranch can bring here to Armenia, and then it becomes it has an opportunity to continue. So there has to be that first opportunity, probably, unless you find, some USAID grant that is available. It's probably going to be dependent upon me finding someone that says, you know what, I think you're, bright enough and helpful enough to help us do something. So provide us some resources, and we'll come up with a way to pay for some of that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we can be thinking about as we look at these type of opportunities too is Armenia, as an example, has brilliant software talent. One of the coolest ESG companies that I've met in the last 2 years is three Armenians that they got their venture started on doing financial analysis of ESG, environment, social, and governance companies, and now are kicking butt in Connecticut and doing really well. And so it could be, as an example, that we help one of those companies that emerges. It could be as well that someone in the community says, hey, there is a lot of brilliance in the software development capability. It could be one of the startups. You say, hey, I don't have the money to actually pay in Austin, to compete against Google and paying $200,000 for a software developer, but maybe I can actually find a software developer based out of Armenia. That's a great way for this to start, because this is a community thing, right? This is, and Moran and the person that's in the role of the country manager can broker those type of relationships. It's not going to just go through me, Kevin, or Tech Ranch proper. The community is going to be able to reach out. You might think, for those of you all that are familiar with how open source software works, Linus, the Finnish guy, started Linux, and he put it out on a server, and then a lot of people started interacting with it, and now it's on more. It's now quite powerful. That's partially the same analog that we should be thinking about, the metaphor that we should be thinking about how we leverage the community. I might have got something started, but really the thing that's happening is now, Moran here is actually taking advantage of this. And, every once in a while he calls me up, about once a quarter, it seems like, that we exchange the message, and something significant comes out of it. Like, as an example, interacting with the 40 students that he introduced me to, that we're doing business from everything from the wine industry in Armenia, which is the longest standing wine culture in the world, to software development, to other businesses like that. So thanks for that example, Moran. Stick around, and we're going to have some people that will have questions for you, I'm sure, as we go to the next few slides. Next example is Matthew Sellier from South Australia. So years ago at South by Southwest, South by Southwest is the conference here in Austin. I had this Aussie called me up and said, "Hey, mate, will you meet with me for a drink?" Blah blah blah, and I said, I kind of wasn't even thinking about it, but actually, to Matt's credit, he is actually the person who's responsible for the whole emergence of how I started thinking about the possibility of a country manager. Now, I talked to Matt last night via WhatsApp. It's an awkward time to have him on during the day right now because it's kind of late there. But you know, it's the type of things that happened. So he was based out of Adelaide, Australia. He's right now in Melbourne and spends time in Adelaide and Melbourne. He was at the time. He's now got a different position, but at the time he was the director of the New Ventures Institute at Flinders University. What is the New Ventures Institute? It's one of the premier incubators in Adelaide. Out of the three main universities there, he's one of the premier. I mean, he was running one of the premier incubators in the area. Really interesting technologies and stuff like that. So Adelaide and Austin are sister city relationships, and by the way, there's absolutely no requirement to leverage the sister city. Sister city is a program that the city of Austin runs with other cities in the world. This is how we discovered each other, and we said, "Hey, it's great that we have pictures of this politician and this politician standing next to this flag of Texas and the United States, and this flag of South Australia and of Australia." But nothing of business import or impact came out of that activity. Why don't we do something with it? And so, quite literally, for 4 years, on a weekly basis, Matt and I had weekly conversations. And we started looking at using our own budgets. We just started looking at how is it we could actually make activities. Now, the so what of this is all these years later, we've had student exchanges where there's been interns that have gone back and forth to actually take advantage of being in venture environments. There have been entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurship landings, both directions, successful investments made, foreign direct investment made from Austinites into the Adelaide area or into the South Australia area, as well as a number of other, obviously the politicians have been back and forth as well. And we've supported that because we've given them activities that they can say, hey, this is what happened. The other thing about it is part of what Matt did was he took some of the activities that we had developed at Tech Ranch that we call entrepreneur literacy and turned them into programs that he calls enterprise thinking for all of the undergraduates. If you go through an undergraduate program at Flinders University, you're actually using some insight, some of it, not all of it, but some of it actually started here in Austin at Tech Ranch and became part of that program. And then we started doing other things like this. This last bullet speaks to that because we have partnerships in Mexico, we went down, Matt and I both traveled to Monterrey, Mexico to do interactions with Tec de Monterrey, which is one of the top universities in Mexico, and working with three-way interactions with delegations, a delegation of professors from there, and as well as technology entrepreneurship there. So this is much more advanced. You'll notice that the country manager in this case was already in a position of importance from the standpoint of being at the incubator. Now, you do not have to operate as a country manager. You do not have to have that type of title. You can do kind of what Moran's doing and saying, hey, I just want to help bridge things. In this case, the organizations, were peer organizations immediately able to take action back and forth. A lot of what this looked like is we hosted at least 6 times them coming to South by Southwest and helping their delegations of like 14 entrepreneurs per time land and interact during that week of South by Southwest. So, variety of different examples. This is definitely a much more advanced and a relationship that was cultivated over years. And even to this day, even though it's been, even though Matt left that position at Flinders and went to another university that he's now at Melbourne, we continue to do these activities. The relationship is still in place. It just happens to have more activities directed towards Melbourne than Adelaide at this point. But we've got support from the South Australian government as well to keep activities back in Adelaide. Kind of gives you a different idea. Again, not a formalized structure, but really a lot of exploration that made this happen. Then a final example that I'm going to share is Enrique Dunhe. Some of you know Enrique because you probably met him. If you've been around Tech Ranch very much, you've met him through the Tech Ranch group. But he's based out of Querétaro City, Querétaro State of Mexico. And when I originally met him, he was in a program. He had a company called E. Kepler, based here in Austin as well as in Querétaro. The whole thing that he was doing was he's going through a program called TECBA. Now, TECBA got shut down by the Mexican government, and so a lot of those Mexican companies immediately came over to Tech Ranch. And that's how we originally met. Enrique got involved in one of our programs called Venture Forth years and years, more than a decade ago. We got to really know each other better, and he took his company, E. Kepler, and got it successful to the point that a lot of his day-to-day activities, he doesn't have to do a lot of day-to-day activities inside of that company. You get to a certain point of success, right, and you can actually extract yourself out of that. He supported the Mexican Venture Bridge that was funded by the federal government of Mexico. A lot of what he was doing in this case was helping Mexican companies try to understand what it is when they actually, he taught some of the classes for helping Mexicans come to the United States and deal with Gringolandia, and I mean that slightly like it's like when you're in the United States and you're from a different country, sometimes it's good to have someone who can say, hey, when an American does this, this is what it means. It doesn't mean, it's not an insult. Maybe some activities we might do would be an insult in Mexico, but aren't meant as an insult here. He became a business partner in the core organization of Tech Ranch. In fact, the role that he plays is he is our international accounts manager. If you've ever been involved, for those of you all that are running ecosystems in other parts of the world, usually the first conversation happens with me, but then it quickly gets handed over to Enrique because he manages that very well. And so part of what happened is he became a business partner in this organization. And then part of what happened with the gentleman you see in the bottom right corner, three of us recognized, Enrique, myself, and one of our other Tech Ranch entrepreneurs from more than 15 years ago, a guy by the name of Chris Nielsen. We recognized a supply chain opportunity that's using my connections in Mexico, Enrique's depth of understanding of the supply chain because it's related to the original company that he built, and then Chris's knowledge of the whole electrification of mobility. That is, a bunch of the internal combustion engine business is about to switch over to being electric, and there's this massive opportunity for supply chain because right now we really can't get a lot of parts from China anymore. So instead of going to China, let's find supply chain companies in Mexico. Actually, we have now done this in Europe between Germany and Hungary. We've done it between the United States and Mexico, and we're now starting to extend that into other parts of Central America, by the way, as well. But we launched that company. So in this case, Enrique and I formed a relationship that started very, very, kind of like what Moran and I talked about, but then it became so integrated that we're now business partners on two different businesses. I talk to him twice a week, during the week. The key thing that I want you to notice, though, is it wasn't Enrique do this for me. It wasn't me like in the hierarchical model, since there's this whole conversation about death to patriarchy and stuff like that. I'll play around with some of those concepts. It wasn't a hierarchical model. A lot of people come to me and say, hey, I want to work for you. And I'm like, hey, I'll work with you peer-to-peer versus for. Enrique and I met up and through this one thing, got to know each other better. We would recognize opportunities between Mexico and Texas and other parts of the world as well, but Mexico and Texas, that we could go exploit together and work side by side as peers. This is probably the most advanced country manager relationship that we've had. And obviously, Mexico is a really large place. Texas and Mexico are the number one trading partners back and forth. So, even though Enrique started out as, for those of you all that might be from other parts of Mexico that hear this, we'll have multiple locations as an example. He would probably be would claim country manager and state manager of Querétaro, Mexico, as an example. And we do all sorts of things together. But it just kind of gives you a sense of where things could go. The key characteristics, peer relationships that explore back and forth, collaborate together, and develop opportunity back and forth. I want you to see that because I have had in some of the early communications that we got back results for. It's like people are like, "Hey, wait, I'm looking for a job. How much does the country manager pay?" It doesn't pay anything. It doesn't pay anything. We're not going to pay anything. But from a standpoint of this idea of creating an opportunity with each other, some of the opportunities that Enrique, myself, and Chris are going after are multiple millions of dollars together. And it just happens that I have knowledge of one part, he has knowledge of another part, Chris has knowledge of another part. It's just the basic entrepreneurial, equation, right? Part of the thing that we need to be teaching the world together is, there's something that's happened to work. Work is, we're so used to, and most of us around the world are enculturated to this idea that work looks hierarchical. Oh, I'm going to come work for you. You're going to pay me for this. I will give you this many hours. You're going to do this much work for me back. No, this is absolutely not going to work for the country manager thing. The idea here is, hey, let's figure out, you have, one of the things I like joking about is, you have the band, I've got the alcohol, Chris has got the food. Let's have a hellacious party. It's going to be great, right? It's like what I learned in college. I was a poor college kid. There's no way I could have actually thrown a party myself, but we threw some really great parties because we'd get people to come together and actually figure things out together. This is the same kind of idea. That's kind of a funny metaphor. I didn't think about using that before saying it right now, but I think it really says what we can do together. And Enrique it's been just amazing to get to work with him side by side. It's been amazing because there's been times that these type of relationships, I hope to see a lot more around the Tech Ranch community, because when one person's down, you can kind of create these relationships that pick each other up. Now, I hope that happens just individually in the community itself, but this type of business relationship has just been priceless for me. I've seen some of y'all around the Tech Ranch community as well do these type of things. This is exactly what we want to be targeting. So some of the responsibilities, and we have some of these things, we'll have meetings at the beginning of the quarter. We will, as we formalize the overall program, we'll have meetings where it's like one-on-one with the country manager, and then, like I was just mentioning about Enrique, but then there will also be, we're going to start with the next step of this we'll have kind of a true in-depth private orientation. Most of the time when you get to the stages like Matt Cellier and to Enrique's level of interacting with us, there will be a requirement because we will be sharing information that's non-disclosable, because we're actually signing confidentiality agreements with other individuals that we want to start sharing. So at those more advanced levels, there does need to be an NDA, a confidentiality agreement. But and through that, we'll start sharing more about what we're seeing. You would share what you see, and we go look at different experiments. Now, I will be very happy if out of this whole process that we take, that over the next few weeks from this process, I'll be happy if we identify 4 other countries that want, or 4 other individuals that want to interact at the level that Moran did, because that's where things start. The relationship with the Czech Bridge, as an example, we just launched in April, at the end of April, the Texas-Czech Venture Bridge. It was funded by the U.S. government, by the U.S. Embassy out of Prague. The activities were supported, that was 5 years after the initial conversation. Initial conversation happened in Austin, Texas, when a gentleman by the name of David came to Austin as one individual. He then, in 2018, brought a small delegation of people. We interacted with them as well. 2019, we went after the grant together. We won the grant, and then the virus happened, so we had to get 2 years of delay. We did some activities virtually, and then this culminated in finally being able to do trainings on the ground in Prague and in Brno, Czech Republic, at the end of April. So this kind of gives you an idea of some of the concepts and stuff like that. There's also we have a form. We're going to switch this over from the Google form that you see the link on to an Airtable, just because. And the key way of making sure that you're on it is if you filled out the form for country managers at techranch.com/connect. We've already talked about some of these. I've been speaking a lot. And so worldwide network to create fast, real change. I've got all sorts of examples of this. Your benefit for being involved in this is you can actually be in the deal flow. This is not a job. This is a collaboration. It's a different way to think. You can create the benefit of the relationship. I think you've already heard a bunch of different things. So I won't reiterate that. And then the nation or the place, the region that you're representing, having a chance to plug into this. Our community is rich, right? Our community is rich, and I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about cultural awareness and desire to connect to make the world a better place. And so part of this idea is to really focus in on that. From the FAQ document, there was a handful of questions from Inez and a couple other people that we posted. Some of them, I tried to do my best to make sure that most of those questions that came in before have been answered with our examples. So we're doing hard and fast examples versus just a list of questions. But there is going to be an FAQ document, just going to be a Google Doc. I started it over the last few days. But it's pretty important to say that we're not going to open this up to a lot of different people. I want to see who responds, who says, hey, we want to do some things. I already know that we have a French-Colombian woman who, she's half French, half Colombian. She speaks both languages beautifully. She's going to be doing some activities in that case. But the idea is that we really want to make sure that we're only finding people that want to collaborate and explore with us at this stage. This is not something beyond that. If you're looking for a job, it's not the right place. If you're looking for, just a consulting gig or a contract, no, it's not that at all. Hopefully, the example that Moran gave us first person is the best explanation of that. I know we have some people that are just texted me and saying they're having to hop off and stuff like that. We've talked a lot. I got all sorts of questions that are coming in via text as well as LinkedIn message as well as other stuff. But I want to see if anyone else has questions that they'd like to ask and that they'd like to. We have a little bit of time that we can spend on that. Anyone?
I've got
Raise
one.
your hand. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand right now. I see it. Sorry. Anyway,
No,
yeah.
that's okay. Yeah, David Nichols, our entrepreneur in Prague. Tell me all about it.
Kevin, we've been talking a lot, and we have a good relationship, I think, on a lot of levels.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy that I know you, and I'm excited about what we can do together. Well, one thing is, I have an opportunity for TechRanch right now. I was just on this mission to the States, this commercial mission, and these are all companies that want to enter in the U.S. market, right? They don't know how. So what I need to understand is, I told already one, Logio, it's a fairly large Czech company. They've got a beautiful big office here. They have a really successful product, and it's all about supply chain automation. They do some really cool stuff, and I think it's a really, current topic that could be popular in the USA. With all the supply chain things we have going. So, but I told them they're interested in talking to you, but what I couldn't do is say, look, I think they can do this, that, and the other, but I don't understand exactly everything you and TechRanch can do for, I don't have the sales pitch that I can give.
Well, and so in that case, it's not that you necessarily have to sell anything. Yeah, the main idea here is, just handing that introduction off and saying, hey, this company is waiting. And it could just be, the best thing is to, the perfect thing in that case would be an email that goes to myself, Jello, my assistant, and Enrique. That way you've got the three guys that target. Jello kind of manages all the traffic signals to make sure that the trains run on time. Enrique is the person that does the majority of the follow-up once we've identified someone. A lot of times I like to be involved in the first conversation just because since I know quite, literally I know the network the best, I might be able to give some, free insight at the very beginning of the conversation, as well as tell them specifically what programs. We'll be having a more formal announcement. We formalized our programs. We haven't announced them yet because we're testing them out with these 12 new companies that are coming inbound to, from Hungary, from the Czech Republic on the project we just did, from Japan, and from, it's actually more than 12, but from Central America as well. And we're testing out a different way of doing our programs to tailor things, but still to have some leverage back and forth. So all you have to do in that case, introduce.
Okay, but
And
that's
now
that's great.
the key thing to know,
Uh-huh.
is like if there's a desire on your part to stay involved in the conversation, like if there's a desire that you're actually wanting to, like in your case, I'm going to project. I know a little bit about David's business. He's got his own business where he does some really interesting things with conversational AI, and we can talk about that, artificial intelligence. So I'd assume that you're just going to say, hey, I'd like to just do these introductions and really step back, right? You're not looking to be involved in the longer term relationship with the company or things like that, right?
Well, I'm trying to partner with these guys also. They do AI, they do a lot of analytics, and I think that we can add value to what they're doing. However, in this case, also, I'm interested in the US market. I do not know all the services that TechRanch offers. I didn't even know about the call on Wednesday. I'm not taking advantage of the Venture Outfitter Network, I think. And so,
Let's do this. Let me make sure I signal it to Jello right now because
yeah.
you're paying for the network level. You should have access to those. Jello, make sure that David's on that calendar invite, and
Okay.
we will make sure that you get invited into that. Part of what's happening is we are looking at replacing the network software because I'm just not happy with it, and I think we're looking for an expert to come define that. We hired someone, didn't work out. Looking for someone to manage our network, not manage it, set it up correctly, because I think that we now need something to go even farther than what we have. And we want expertise, not the someone that just hacks at it. So sorry thank you for your patience about it not being as perfect on getting that message to you. But yeah, hop into that program on those programs on Wednesday.
Okay, I can hand you, I
And
would like to refer all of these companies to TechRanch. All of them
okay,
want to enter in the US market. All of them, none of them have really a plan, or most of them don't have a plan. Some of them, like, were there from Honeywell and IBM that were like taking us to government big things in DC and all over the place. But most of them are like smaller companies, but some of them are even quite large. When I say smaller, they can have a couple hundred employees and 30-40 million dollars a year of revenue. So these guys are serious, really serious, but they don't know how to do it. So I think you could help them, but I don't know exactly how. And I need to
so
be
in
also
cases
to say, well, not just a reference. I should be able to tell them, hey, TechCrunch can do this, that, and the other for you, right? Because these guys are super busy and they've got all kinds of things going.
typically what will happen in those kind of cases is there are a number of different sometimes if an organization's at a certain point, actually let me give you a specific example. There's a company that has a piece of AI that's I won't disclose how the AI is being used, but it's from Milan, Italy. They're beyond the level of the programs that we have. We have some light programs and some heavier programs, more than 100 people and really well funded and kicking butt, taking names all across Europe and other countries as well, just now entering the US market. In that case, part of what we'll do is the specific thing that happened is from our network of trust. For what this company does, they need expertise in B2C, and I put the top B2C marketing person that I know in my career in contact with them, and they're now in the process of that kind of the type of marketing strategy that they need goes beyond our programs. I mean, our programs are helpful for opening the door, But then the woman that I'm referring to, I'll get permission to share her name because we'll get her to present one of these times. But in that case, the marketing strategy is being written by one of the United States' top marketing strategists that I personally vouch for. So the other thing to be thinking about is in our network of trust, part of what we have is we have these other consultants that have, she's actually got a 12-person firm based here in Austin. I'll just mention it. I think she'd be fine with it, called the Mitchell Group. And so, we we'll at TechRanch recognize the first key part, but then put someone like the 200-person firm or 100-person firm that's really well funded, that's really truly at a certain point, they might need something beyond just the earlier stage programs. Now that being said, a lot of times we'll still put a company like that through our earlier stage programs because they don't necessarily know how to speak American, and even as successful or as financially well off as they are, they still bounce off of the U.S. market, and so that's one thing that'll happen. But David, by the way, in even doing those kind of connections, you're operating in this idea of country manager, right? It's like that's part of what I'm trying to say, and that you're, you'd like to see more connections back and forth, and that ends up creating impact. The other activities that David has talked about with me in the past that I'll just expose is since obviously I'm supporting Ukraine. Based on, if you don't know what the flag is, this is the Ukrainian flag, Slava Ukraini. The thing that we're having conversations about, and we'll leverage the country manager program as well for that. Slightly different, but there's a number of us that are concerned with how do we support Ukrainians, how do we support the rebuilding of Ukraine in the future. That will be something we're going to do under the construction of the country manager process as well. Other questions? I know that we've gone over, and I meant to have us finish up. Irakli.
Yes,
from Georgia.
It's fascinating just hearing. This is my first time joining, and I'm interested in establishing connections between country of Georgia and obviously, a lot of companies would like to come into the US market. The ones that come in go to East Coast, West Coast. What I'm really interested in, where I would like to explore opportunities in, is country of Georgia and Texas specifically. And the second part, just listening to the different conversations here from people from different countries, also connecting Georgia, not Georgia, US, but Georgia and other countries. There has been a tech company out of Georgia that was in the gambling software that established connections in Estonia and Malta and other parts of the world. So I don't know if that's something that it sounds like it's something that's perhaps possible.
Yeah, that is right in line. Totally right in line with the design. In fact, one of the things our colleagues in Brno, Czech Republic, that we just did this project with in Brno. I was just in Brno in April, but obviously we've been working with them for a while. This is the first time I was personally on the ground there. They were quite surprised when one of our companies that's based out of Oslo, Norway, opened up an office in Brno. So yeah, what you're saying about sometimes it makes sense that it's not all about the U.S. As much as Americans we'd like to think, it's not all about the U.S. They might be coming to America, but they also are going to the Czech Republic. Like the Norwegians, this one office in a company called Itera, that's one of the most innovative companies in all of Norway. They've been selected 3 years in a row as the top most innovative, or in the top 5 most innovative companies. In their case, as an example, we're assisting them with some of the things that are happening there in Brno. And there's other examples of, like as an example, when the war started in Ukraine, we had several people that said, hey, we need people to land other places. That happened. During the refugee crisis that happened in Afghanistan last year, one of our members that we had come on shared how he got 1,200 people out of Afghanistan at the end of August. At the end of August, I know everyone's. We have a lot of people that are having to drop out, and they're sending messages. So I'll wave and say goodbye to a number of you guys. But back to that concept. We helped some of those Afghans gain access to Pakistan, and then gain access to other places to land. One of the people we've had speak on this program before, it was for more than 12 years with the consul of Dominican Republic in Pakistan, and because of that, this woman was able to help connect with that as well. So, both on humanitarian issues as well as business issues, it's not just about the U.S. Any good network should have decentralization like that. So, and certainly, part of the tech talent that I know exists in Georgia, the country of Georgia, certainly, yeah, gaining access to that in other parts of the world, I can imagine, would be really powerful. Okay, well, I tell you what, I know that we've gone over by about 10 minutes on our normal time, that there's going to be a bunch of other questions. If you have other questions, part of our global team is listening in to this. You've seen Raj and you've seen Matthew Sherleby in the actual studio. For those of y'all that can't see all the different people that I can, they're part of our global team. They're working on some of the details about how to make this and take it to the next level. So we'll be putting together the FAQ. We'll be doing some. If you think you have a strong curiosity for something, and like I said, in the context of collaboration and exploration, let us know. We'd like to engage with you, and we will continue to formalize this in the coming months, days, years. We're just at that point now that I want to go ahead and say, hey, look what's been happening already. Let's go do more of that, because it's having an impact and it's really cool. Okay, well, with that, I will just remind everyone about, we'll bring back the slides and remind everyone, if you want to join our email list, if you'd like to get on the list of prospective country managers, if you have any other questions, if you go to this website, on this web page right here, there's a lot of different things you can plug into. Take advantage of that. And then if you're not in the community software already, we do not charge for you to join the community. There's other programs that we were alluding to earlier that there is a small charge and then larger charges and then, projects of all sorts of different sizes. But make a long story short, this is a good place to start right here. Get on the email list at least, so we can actually start keeping you in the loop about what's happening. And with that, we'll bring today's program to a close. It's always an honor to work with entrepreneurs around the world that are driven by vision and values. I'm excited about what we're doing with this next step in taking these venture bridges and taking them to the next level. Let's go change the world for the better together. Thank you all very much. Y'all take good care.